We're going to kick off with a keynote of how Qurate is evolving its digital future by innovating live shopping. So Qurate Retail Group, many of you know its brands, QVC, HSN, Zulily, there's a number of others. They really are the OG of live streaming. And it makes a lot of sense that we would have Brian Beitler, he's SVP of e-commerce at Qurate Ventures, to talk about the way they've been viewing live streaming, where they see it going, why they think it's important for others in the industry to be thinking about it more as well. And in working with Brian, one of the things that I noticed is that, at least in all of the preparation, he's not putting this in the context of, well, you should do this because it's really big in China. He actually, as you'll hear, has a lot of data and can demonstrate the opportunity that there is domestically for live streaming. So with that, please welcome to the stage Brian Beitler with Qurate Retail Group.
Wait, am I on mute? You've all been there, right? Aren't we glad to be out of mute? I'm glad to be out of mute. You might not be by the time I'm done, but I hope that I have some things to share that will be interesting with you. Scott, I appreciate it. Veronica, Alan, for the invitation to be here and to talk about something that I get pretty excited about. My role just changed. We're not going to talk a lot about that, but I joined Qurate about a year and a half ago as their Chief Marketing Officer for QVC and HSN, the two largest parts of the brand, and have moved over to spend a lot of time working on v-commerce and what the future of v-commerce is as a business. But before we get there, I just thought it would be good just to set some context on how we think about this space and why it's so important, and what we think you should be doing and learning from us, hopefully, and what we're learning as we go through this process. But I always put a slide up. I always start most of my presentations or conversations with a slide of the folks that I've talked to in the last year. So these are customers that I've had one-on-one conversations with to gain perspective on what matters to them in their experience of shopping with our brands, and understanding how to connect with them in a better way, how to engage them in a more interesting and a more powerful way. And what was interesting as I went through this journey, I've spent 20 plus years in retail working across a range of brands. You can look me up at LinkedIn if you want to see that history. I'm not going to give it to you, but it's always been fascinating to me how much commonality there is at the core of most shoppers and the things that they tend to value most. And I think about Renee. She's in the center there on the scooter when I met her and her journey, right, for solving during the pandemic a need for exercise and trying to find an exercise bike at the time when brands like Peloton could do no wrong, right, in their journeys and were selling like wildfire, and turned to us for a solution to that problem, and then fell in love because the experience brought her something that she had never imagined or understood. So as a start point, how many of you have bought or shopped QVC? Just raise your hand. It's okay, because I need to know how many of you I have to convert before we're done today. And it's good to know that I have opportunity for growth immediately. So we've had some pretty heavy conversations this morning and last night at dinner about the future and how uncertain it is, as Scott mentioned, and is a recession coming? When's a recession coming? But the good news is opportunity sits right in front of you all the time, even in a recession. And so we'll get there to that. So good, I've got some work to do. Well, I want to start with the evolution of commerce just before we get into our journey and where we are. And again, back to those customers and what matters most. And what's interesting for me is if you look, this is the journey of where the world has been. So before probably corner stores, there might have been street merchants, right? And then as towns came into existence in this country, right? Corner general stores developed where merchants brought in solutions to problems that their communities had. You had a chance to get to know and meet that general store manager. They might have been able to even anticipate whether or not you needed some flax or not for weaving your own linen. And they had an appreciation and an understanding of the market, and they had conversations to connect on what their audience needed. Then we moved to kind of Main Street USA, right? Towns got larger, streets stretched out, people started to specialize, and we ended up in this environment where we had now people who had particular expertise in certain categories of experiences. And again, still operated for the community where they understood people and they engaged with and they knew people. Then this new invention came along actually about the same time, started General Store this idea of catalogs, which is the view of saying, hey, look, we can make things accessible to markets far beyond our normal reach with a little bit of some horse and buggies and some catalogs, right? And open the door for this new era of convenience as a part of buying and accessibility as a part of buying. And then all of a sudden the mall showed up, which again just scaled up the ability to reach specialization at a huge scale, the ability to find everything that you needed. Curation was powerful. You could find specialty brands that had your style or your journey. And then malls exploded, and then e-commerce websites, and then social media. And it's interesting because many of us are stopped at this point, and we just see the future as continuing to grow. We haven't reached the end of the journey. In fact, we think what was true in the beginning is about to be true again, which is if you go back to those early days of the shopping experience, where you got to know the personalities behind the products and the personalities behind your shops, much of that over the last decade has faded away with the advent of e-commerce, where convenience and value trumped connection. And social media, I think, has illustrated just how human we all still are, and our humanity hasn't changed, and we have craved connection from the beginning, and we crave it today. And the question is how do you as a brand find a pathway back to connection? We think that pathway is very clear. We think very much that the future of e-commerce is v-commerce, and that everything in the digital space will be driven from a live and live-like experience. Because in that mode, you can see and connect and feel emotion in a way that you just can't on flat, static PDP pages. And it's funny because we've learned that journey over the last 30, 40 years doing it in television. So we reach over 200 million homes globally today, on 14 different stations across 7 different countries, right, telling the narrative behind the founders and inventors of their products to consumers who care about what they buy and why they're buying it, and who want to understand more than ever the stories and narratives. And if you think about the rising generation, Gen Z in particular, this is so central to who they are as human beings. They've learned this journey of being able to know deeply about people because they spend all their time just hearing and listening to people and gaining perspective of them. And so as we start this journey together, and I tell you about a few things, my question for you is, where are you at in your journey of evolving and telling your brand story, and how fast are you getting there? Because we see our own need for evolution and have been in the process of evolving for the last decade or so as many of these places have emerged. So just a little chart to help ground how we see the world of e-commerce, right? We see 4 key areas in which you can play in this space. Dedicated linear channels haven't gone away. How many of you are still using television advertising? Few big hands up there. Some not yet in that space. How many of you wish you had the budget to use television advertising? And yeah, a few more hands go up in the space, right? The reality is this is a space where people still consume. You know it's important. I'll tell you how you know it's important. So the biggest video platform, this one called YouTube, recently launched, and you can't miss their television ads if you watch YouTube television, right? As they take on the cable industry to say, hey, they understand that big screen that sits in your living room is still a valuable place to consume. We know it too. It's a great place to be able to tell people stories about products and brands as well. Then traditional e-commerce. This is the place that all of us are playing in at some level today, but we see the evolution of those PDP pages and those home pages to being much more alive, right? The journey of being able to have interactions and see humans tell stories again in a very emotive way is evolving. And you're seeing players begin to stay in this place. Amazon, Amazon Live, Wayfair. Obviously, we are heavily involved here. On the bottom left, this idea of digital streaming services, right? So we've spent the last several years, right, establishing our foothold in all of the places that as consumers migrate to streaming services, as some migrate completely away from linear channels, right, that we're in a place where they can still consume this on their big screen, on their small screens, or in whatever experience that they're having, but they have a place to see and interact and understand and fall in love with brands. And then the last place you've seen a lot of players play, right, is obviously social media. So, Facebook launched their commerce platform years ago, Instagram, Pinterest, everybody's playing in these spaces, right? There are new brands emerging. ShopShops is a business out of China, right, that's shown up here, PopShop Lives. There are other players kind of in this social space of commerce. And so the question is, in this ecosystem, where are you in the journey of being able to tell the story across this new frontier? because we know it's huge and it's going to get bigger. So this is just a view from CoreSite Research. I was at Shop Talk with Deborah a few months ago talking about just the trajectory of growth that's coming in this space. So in all the turmoil, all the concern about recession and shrinking and flat e-commerce sales, right, which were on this tear and then just kind of leveled off, the reality is there's growth ahead. And it's going to come fast and it's going to come hard. And it's in this landscape of video commerce as this emerges as the next way to engage and to connect with brands. And again, the winners, like those in e-commerce, are those that get in early, that hone their skill in this new channel, that figure out what the customer value proposition needs to be for their brand in the marketplace, that finds the right personalities and talents and hosts and storytellers to be a part of this growing space. Because it is going to be a landscape changer and it's going to be fun. And now, because I'm a marketing guy, I get to show you a video about how we're doing it. And shut up for a minute.
I hope that I inspire you to try something new.
Cher said Amy Morrison is great.
And she called you babe.
Oh my gosh.
I'd say today, you just earned yourself a big ticket!
Top 10 most magical things I've ever done in my life.
Happy dance!
Being able to give ideas, I can't tell you how happy that makes me feel because I know it makes you happy.
We could do it together. I got strong elbows and shoulders, so y'all jump on either side and I'll be your guide through it. What do you say?
So we're excited about the journey and the space and the platform that sits out here. And again, as we talked about those 4 quadrants, right, we've been spending time just evolving every bit of the way that we can show up in this space. This just gives you a view of the breadth and reach that's already been built across our platforms as the space has emerged in the industry, right? So 75 million devices already in interactive. You can see that the impact of digital live streaming and how many devices we're trying to put our brands and the places where we can interrupt and interact and build relationships with consumers, and not losing sight, right, of what happens on the big screen all along that journey as well. Still a huge driving part of our business and of our growth, and collectively, $14 billion strong across the globe from a revenue perspective. So as we think about this for us, the goal is to say, look, how do you lead in emerging spaces? So for us in the streaming platform, right, building these interactive destinations for consumers where they can see and come into contact with content maybe that they've never seen before, right? So exclusive original programming. So when you enter the new space, what's new, what's interesting in your space, and building new programming, in our case, right, across the value proposition for us. So we do drive against value. We have deal drops, which is about products at great values, but building new original content. Vanessa, by the way, is one of our hosts who really can't cook. And so it's her journey from world-class chefs of being taught how to cook, right, in that space, or doing something in the outdoor space in your backyards, but building new and original programming in spaces and thinking about each of our spaces as someplace new, someplace different to kind of engage and build brands. Also figuring out how to build seamless buying. So this is interesting, working with these new providers, helping them develop new capabilities, including shopping literally from your remote. So if you're still in that space, because look, our goal is for customers who are 18 to 88 to go, look, we want to make seamless buying as easy for you as possible. And that means even innovating in traditional spaces or in traditional ways, using things like a remote control to turn it into a commerce device and to be able to really drive sales and to grow the business in that pathway. Or looking at the emerging social channels. So a couple of things here as you think about social, which is interesting for us, and learning how to do some things differently. So, one of those is learning how to leverage others' voices. You might think about this too as your brand. Most of you, how many of you are using influencers? How many of you have a relationship with influencers at this point? Or trying to figure out Raise your hand so everybody can see that everybody in the room is working with influencers, right? So we're all trying to find people who have credible authority, credible voice, right, to be able to speak to our customer, and it's powerful. At the end of the day, human connections still trump almost any other type of connection. Not that brands don't have amazing personalities and brands can't tell amazing stories, and you can't fall in love with brands. I have some brands that I love myself. But the reality is the people behind those brands are more powerful, and this is why influencers have such huge momentum in the marketplace. I don't see that changing. The question is who are your internal influencers? Who are the voice of your brands that other people will follow them? Most of you, if you have retail shops, have thousands of them. There are store associates all over the country who just have a way of connecting with people and telling stories. Go Live, was listening to a couple of brands this morning talk about how they're going live. I think Vera Bradley mentioned, right, just taking some of their stores and just going live to be able to give audiences access to people. And the reason we love live and love live selling is because if I think about the small environment, I loved going in and out of stores, and so I've missed that in this current world of not being inside of a store where you can feel the energy that close to the customer and that close to the associate, because it's an amazing place to be. But I watched relationships happen one-on-one all the time. Great store leaders or great store associates connect with customers, have these bonding moments in some of the brands that I worked in. What's interesting with live is if you find the right person, you can do that at scale. And I think one of my favorite conversations that I had with customers was listening to them tell me the narratives about how they knew, David Venable is one of our most successful hosts, but if David Venable lived next to them, he would be their best friend. And they would drink wine on the back porch together. And what was interesting is I heard that from one customer, and then 2 customers, and then 10 customers, and then 20 customers. I'm like, who is this guy? I had to meet David. I'd been there a very short time, and I hadn't met David yet. Because somehow he managed, in the way that he tells his stories, to get millions of our customers to feel like he was their best advisor. You can do that too, and this is a powerful place, and it's going to change the commerce relationships. And then again, let your talent tell their stories. Right? So again, this goes back to putting people out there and letting them tell the narratives, and then just be original in the space. So and that's hard, because if you're a brand and you have guardrails and you have guidance around brands, sometimes we have this difficulty of going live. If they're live, who's going to supervise them? Right? And that's the fear that we get into in brand stewardship. But the reality is consumers care about that connection and authenticity. If anything, if we learned anything through the pandemic, as who you saw our cameras in the video, we know how to produce live TV. We produce more live TV than anybody in the country. And what was interesting is we evolved away from all those cameras and lights to just devices in the home, how much love we got from consumers who felt like, wow, it's awesome to be able to connect and be inside some of these celebrities' homes, some of these individual sellers' homes, and be able to get closer to their narrative. Don't worry about that, be authentic. And then again, we just launched this last year as we watched about that view of going, hey, how do we used to have customers, we still do, who would call in and keep these connections, and we wanted to evolve again the way for consumers to be able to give feedback in new original content, so we launched live streams. There's new programming every day, very different than our traditional programming, right, to leverage this chance to be able to have dialogues and interactions with these consumers in the one-on-one space. And lastly, I would just say, if you think about why v-commerce matters, is because there's no better way to tell your story than to tell your story. And that's what going live allows you to do, is to bring the richness and the texture of people who are in love with the brand, who are passionate about the brand, to tell these stories and to drive the stories. And you can find your own pathway to do that and bring voices to life. This is Candace Cameron Bure, who we just launched a new line with her. She's been a part of the brand in a variety of ways for a different period of time. We'll just
fashion and style is just a big part of who you are individually. Hi, I'm Candace. Whether you're a mom and you're going to carpool, whether you're working out of your home or going to the office, the Candace Cameron Bure clothing line really connects with every woman out there. These are all pieces that you can feel comfortable and confident in, pieces that coordinate together so easily and effortlessly. That's what this collection's all about.
So just a promo story, right, for her connection when she's on there to be able to help tell her story. So at the end of the day for me, it's really about what do you do next? as a leader in this space, as a leader for your brand, driving your business. And I would just say there are 3 simple things. This is 3, not 3. Yeah, 3 simple things. 1, start. Right? Start experimenting. You don't need, right, the production studios that we have in Westchester and St. Petersburg to get into the space of broadcasting live. You can go live at any point, and you're going to have to find your pathway there and learn what connects with your customer and how you begin to tell and build your narratives. You can figure out how to put these, on your own websites, put them into your social spaces, invite audiences to come and be a part of you. You can change the trajectory of your business if you get in there. The last thing I might suggest is get a guide, right? So, we've been doing this for 40 years, helping brands successfully grow through live commerce. We'd be happy to help some of you grow through live commerce, but there are also a lot of influencers and voices in this space that are learning here, and get one. Because it's hard when you chart new territory without having some expertise as a partner or as a part of your guide, and you can do that and you can find access to them. And then I would say the last thing, man, this is an exciting new frontier of retail. If you're not in the space, you're going to be like many of the brands, and I'm old enough to remember sitting in conference rooms talking about e-commerce and going, do you think we should have a website? And that conversation took way too long. If you're sitting around a table right now saying, do you think we should live stream? You might not be here in 20 years or 10 years. It's not a conversation. It's a reality. It's the future of the way consumers are going to expect to shop. Younger generations are being raised on live and video interactions of their favorite spaces, their favorite players in video games or in shopping or in communication or in anything that they're doing. The future is coming, and the future is live. Thanks, guys.